Explain why BlueVoyant is different from other cybersecurity firms.
Well, thank you. BlueVoyant specializes in two things. We provide internal defense of their networks for companies that can use our expertise and talent and technology to best defend themselves. We also provide external defense of their supply chains because well-defended companies are still often hit through attacks routed through their supply chains.
So, Mr. Secretary, this seems like a pretty crowded field at this point. A lot of people are getting into it. What made you choose this one and to invest in?
Well, let me just say, in general, we're very focused on cybersecurity and national security. This is our fourth investment in the space, and we view this as very complementary to our other investments. Jim's built a business that we believe is best in class, and we think it's a terrific opportunity. We also think that the current events just highlight how important it is for every country, every company to be protected and have best-in-class cybersecurity tools.
Jim, we're meeting here on an interesting day to be talking, as David pointed out, about cybersecurity. Is the news driving business? Are headlines that we're seeing coming from Ukraine, from Russia, from Eastern Europe, where cyber attacks have become, in some cases, a daily event? Is that driving demand? Is it increasing orders for the company?
Well, it's doing two things. The first is it's making our services all the more needed. And secondly, it's for our existing clients. We're able to, provide reassurance that they're being protected in the best possible way. Look, the Russians have got really advanced cyber capabilities, both at the state level and in their criminal groups. And therefore, critical infrastructure in particular needs to be very careful and needs to raise their defenses to very high levels.
Mr. Secretary, I know you're not in the government anymore, but you know about these things. Have we seen an uptick in some of the cyber attacks emanating from perhaps Russia?
I think we've had. That's the intelligence we've been getting from all of our portfolio companies. When I was in government, I was responsible for cybersecurity for all of financial services, and I would say that's an industry that Jim knows well and is pretty well protected, either pretty well or very well protected. But many other industries have not taken this as seriously as financial services and need to do so.
Secretary, I'm curious your thought on the proper response from the U.S. to cyber attacks. We've had members of Congress, members of the Senate on this program, including Mark Warner, suggest that a cyber attack that crossed the border into one of our allied nations would, in fact, be the possible trigger for an Article 5 response. As someone who has spent time in the executive branch, is that how you see it? Could a cyber attack, in fact, be considered or should be considered an act of war?
I think it could be, although I would say that I think the details have to be reviewed very carefully. Many times, cyber attacks come from nation states, but they also come from non-nation state actors. But I think there's no question the U.S. is very well prepared on cybersecurity itself, but industry needs to make sure it's protected just as well. And the good news is there are great tools out there. Jim uses many of these best-in-class tools, and there's many things that companies can do to protect themselves.
Mr. Secretary, we're just under an hour away, we believe, from hearing from President Biden, in which he no doubt will address the question of sanctions. When you were Treasury Secretary, you obviously oversaw sanctions. Give us your sense of what is effective and what is not so effective. And let me be more specific. There seems to be a question now about possibly cutting off Russia from the SWIFT payment system, with the UK saying, yeah, it's a good idea, Germany not so much.
Well, let me just say, many of these issues we were dealing with 2 years ago. The chancellor was previously the finance minister, and I was negotiating with him on Nord Stream 2 years ago about making sure that they had energy independence, that they had access to U.S. LNG, that they had access through Ukraine. So these are not new issues. Now, I have heard President Biden say that he's going to respond with very strong sanctions. I hope that does include SWIFT. If I were in the seat today, that's what I would be recommending to the president. And I think it's time that we now cut off Russia from the U.S. dollar system.
Jim, when it comes to nation states as opposed to rogue actors, who's on the cutting edge? Who's the greater threat when it comes to cyber? Is it Russia or China?
The cutting edge includes both of them. In terms of cyber capabilities, Russia and China have got the most advanced nation-state capabilities. And we need to, in this case, be very concerned because Russia both has some of the most advanced capabilities in the world, but they also have got a different and greater risk tolerance than most countries. And they're willing, therefore, to take advantage of those capabilities in ways that others would be hesitant to.